Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. In this episode, we'll be coming over to our steel mill and finally getting this whole mess figured out and finished. The goal for the steel mill is probably to have it run similarly to how this station is, since they probably have similar throughput in terms of how many trucks come and go at any given moment, so obviously this takes up a lot more space than what's currently at the steel mill right here, so this is going to mean some decent rebuilding, but we'll get that done up quick, and hopefully we won't have to touch the steel mill again for quite a while. So let's pretty much just level the entire area and start from scratch. So we'll delete these roads, delete all these buildings, and then see pretty much how much space we're left with afterwards. Alright, so now we are left with this blank slate of an area that we can now turn into a hopefully pretty functional steel mill truck station. Alright, so let's roll with this station layout and see if this will function how we want it to before we get into everything else. And we'll make sure our platforms are set correctly. So the only one that's not really functioning exactly how we want it to is this one that's taking the steel over to, I believe, yeah, that's for the goods factory, is that line. And I'm not too sure why it's doing that. The only thing I can think of is this road isn't long enough to allow you to switch lanes, so it prefers to come on this road and then get into the lane that it needs to. I'm not really sure. So really it's no big deal. We can just simply, I think, switch this one to platform 2 and then switch the other one to a different platform. And if we check those, well, you can see this one's also having issues now too. So I think it's, if they need to be in the left lane, they have to be on this half of the station, which I find odd. But I suppose it makes sense if it doesn't have space to switch lanes. So let me just get that organized so everything functions normally, and then we can begin to detail the area. Alright, so now everything is functioning exactly how we want it to. Everything seems to be flowing pretty smoothly through here, so let's keep that how it is, and let's get some details coming into this area. Alright, so here's where a lot of our big buildings are going to go. I don't think we're going to really add any more buildings in this area. A lot of it's just going to be small details, so we'll stick with this large building and this one, and then these sort of default storage buildings which sort of fit in the area, so we'll keep that as they look sort of almost like administrative buildings for the whole steel mill itself. So maybe this will become a parking lot, not too sure, but that's what we're going to figure out next. Alright, so this is, I think, what we're going to leave the steel mill off with. You can see we've added some details here, a little parking lot over here for all the cars that would come. We have a little steel storage area and this building, and then we have sort of the production area where all the steel gets produced at. And I think this sort of comes together nicely. I think the fence we have wrapping around really sort of ties everything in and makes it feel like one larger industry. I think once this levels up more and fills out this area, we might also be able to expand out this way, but I'm pretty happy with how it is, so let's leave it at that and move on. So the next thing I want to do in this video is come back over here and make yet another city connection. And the connection we're going to make, I think, is going to be from Jackson and Scottdale right across the river to Stockton. Now, as we can see, Stockton's a very small town, and it really doesn't have much room to grow. So, I don't think getting a train station here is realistic. So, even getting a track over to the city, I think it would be pretty hard in itself, let alone trying to get it to work and function with this terrain. So, I think what we're going to do is have a little ferry service that comes from Stockton and comes over and lands somewhere in this area. Now, I think I want this port to stay largely cargo, since it's very built up for it and quite frankly looks like it. So I think we'll leave this as a cargo port, and then I think over on the Scottdale side we'll have a little ferry port, maybe somewhere over here. We already have a bus stop over this way, so maybe we can squeeze it in along the river here, and that's not too far out of the way for Stockton either. So I think let's start out on probably the easier side of this line and get our port set up in Stockton. If we just take a quick look here at a passenger harbor, it wouldn't take up too much space here. We can almost just directly connect it to this road. However, we do have this empty space here that we could probably fill in pretty easily and quickly if we did something in this area and added like a parking lot. Again, as a passenger port, it probably doesn't need too many details besides maybe some cars to give it life. So I think we'll plop this down around here and then we can get into detailing it. Alright, so here we have our port placed down. I think this is a good spot, and then we can fill in this area with a parking lot. So we'll need to delete these buildings and all the trees, and then we'll be able to get started here. So first of all, let's flatten the area so that we have a nice even spot to build on, and we'll want to bring that up to the edge there, but also smooth it out so it looks natural. I think that works pretty well. So then we can come in and paint this whole area with the asphalt, just sort of fill all that in. And I think we might stop right here at this edge. We'll go find, I believe it's gravel. Yeah, it's probably a mix of gravel and something else. And then we can begin to sort of create this edge where we'd probably put a fence, to be honest. So now we have our little fenced off area. Let's get in here with some parking spots and see what kind of layout we can get over here. Alright, so here's our parking lot. So let's just populate it with cars and then we can move over and set up over in Stockton. Alright, so we have all of our cars placed and everything like that. I think we might actually get one more bus stop in here that connects. Although this one does connect. So we might actually just move this one to a more frontal location of the port. So let's just delete that. Come into our buildings, get a bus / tram stop, and hopefully this isn't too far away where it looks like it did just slip right over, so that's exactly what we want. If we look here, the line still functions how we want it to, and I think we're good to leave off the Stockton area. Alright, so now let's figure out what we're going to do over here in Scottdale. And we already identified this area as probably a good spot for it, so let's begin by first clearing out the area. And then we'll probably have to straighten out and level a bunch of roads over here, since there's a bit of a slope coming over to this area. Alright, so we've had to do some pretty extensive rebuilding in this portion of Scottdale, but I think this area is finally laid out well enough for us to have this port. The elevation change is just way too steep to realistically have a road. I mean, even this road over here is a little unrealistic, but I think we definitely need that connection there, or else we'd run into issues with other things. So this is probably about as good as we're going to get in terms of layout and elevation changes. We do have our bus stop here, but it's not connected to the network, and I think that's just because the road was deleted, so we ran into some issues there. But now it should be all connected back up. We might want to just fix this real quick so that we don't have a weird little road in there. And I think we can finally get into the details of all of this. So I think this area is going to largely end up being the same as the one over in Stockton, so there's not really going to be too much to show here. So we'll quickly just get that done up, and then we can get our boats set up. Alright, so now we have our Scottdale port pretty much ready to go. So let's get a boat running between these two cities, and hopefully we'll see a good amount of demand from that. So we'll come over to our shipyard here, and we still don't have too many boats, so I'm not really sure which one we'll go with. Although I think I kind of like how this boat looks, the Frontenac. It's a little bit different than the Klondikes that we're running for cargo, so it'll help distinguish which boats are for what. So I'm debating whether to go 2 or 3 boats for this line. Let's start out with 2 and see what happens. So then we can have this boat running from the port here, and then the other one running over to our port over in Stockton. So now as we begin to let this run, hopefully we'll see people start to populate the ports, and in Scottdale hopefully we'll see buildings start to repopulate this area. But I think let's also ramp up the bus networks in each of these cities to be able to handle the sort of passenger traffic that'll start to come through here. So we'll manage these vehicles. I think 6 is still good for Stockton, but I think we just maybe want newer, quicker, higher capacity buses, so we'll go with those. And then over in Scottdale, we only have 6 vehicles running on this loop, and we can already see we have a bunch of people waiting in each area, so let's replace these first of all. I don't think it really matters. I think we'll just go with the fastest ones at the moment. And then I think we'll just pretty much double the amount of buses that we have on this line. So hopefully I'll be able to keep up with the demand, since we have a couple of people waiting here and we're overloading this stop over here in this part of the city. So our first boat is starting to come over to make its first trip, as we can see out here, and looking, it'll probably be able to pick up a full load of passengers once it gets here, which is exactly what we want to see. And hopefully I'll start to bring in a bunch of money, and we'll start to be able to grow Stockton just a little bit. And over on the Scottdale side of things, we do have only just a few people waiting, but hopefully as this line gets established, we'll start to see those numbers start to tick up as buses bring people to the port. So with that, I think that's pretty much all we're going to do in this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.